Hello and welcome. Thank you for downloading Season 1, Episode 33 of the CWSA podcast. I'm Chris Foles, the Executive Director of the Collegiate Women's Sports Awards presented by Honda.
Honda is a proud partner of the Collegiate Women's Sports Awards, the Honda Sport Award, and the Honda Cup. For more than 60 years in the United States, Honda has been committed to giving back to our communities, strengthening society, and helping people reach their life's potential. Through its partnership with the Collegiate Women's Sports Awards, Honda has been powering the dreams of the nation's top female collegiate student athletes since 1987. Learn more about Honda's corporate social responsibility initiatives at csr.honda.com.
The Collegiate Women's Sports Awards, widely known as CWSA, is and has been for the past 45 years the most prestigious athletic award program for collegiate female athletes in the United States. Among its prestigious awards, we honored 12 Division I Honda Sport winners, which culminates in the Honda Cup. The CWSA podcast features the Collegiate Women's Sports Awards past Cup winners who represent the best of the best in college athletics. We hear about their achievements, experiences, and the lessons they have learned on their journey. We also discover where their life's path has taken them beyond their sporting careers. We share these extraordinary athletes of this elite sisterhood of the CWSA family with you each Monday through June in our 45th celebration. This episode catches up with Jennifer Rizzotti, the 1996 Honda Cup winner, who led her UCONN Huskies basketball team as the starting point guard to their first national championship with an undefeated 35-0 record in 1995. Stay with us on social media through @WisSports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And the show notes can be found at wisports.com on the CWSA podcast page. Please follow along with CWSA at CWSA_Honda Cup on Twitter and Instagram, and Collegiate Women's Sports Awards on Facebook and YouTube, as well as on our website. You'll be getting Jen's socials towards the end of the program. And now let me introduce to you our guest today, Jennifer Rizzotti. In 1996, Jennifer virtually swept the postseason collegiate awards as Big East Player of the Year, Big East Scholar Athlete of the Year, the Associated Press Player of the Year, the Wade Trophy winner, and of course, the Collegiate Women Athlete of the Year. In 2016, the two-time Academic All-American and 1996 Academic All-American of the Year, was officially inducted into the College Sports Information Directors of America, Academic All-American Hall of Fame. Rizzotti played 8 seasons of professional basketball and then became head coach at both University of Hartford and George Washington University until this year when she was named president of the WNBA's Mohegan Sun franchise. Jennifer Rizzotti, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. We're kind of winding up our reflections with our past Cup winners, and we are so happy we're able to catch up with you. We usually start at the beginning and say, well, what was your childhood like? When did you start sports, and how did you choose basketball?
Well, that's a pretty easy question. I had a very I had a great childhood. I was very supported by my parents. I grew up with 3 siblings that were also all in sports, but in particular, I had a brother who was 11 months older than me. So it was just easier for my mom and dad to make sure that we both played on the same teams. And my dad was our coach growing up. And so I started my athletic career playing with the boys and playing with older boys and playing in the backyard. My dad was like the umpire and the pitcher and the designated quarterback, and we had all the neighborhood kids in the yard. So I don't remember a time in my life that I wasn't playing some sport. Basketball, I started probably when I was 8 or 9 and got into like playing 5-on-5 in maybe 5th grade, again with the boys at the time. And it was probably around 8th grade that I fell in love with the sport. I was always really big into soccer when I was younger, but then I really started to get serious. I started going to camps and playing basketball more. And I just love the fast paced, speed. I love the competitiveness on every possession. I love that I could impact the game on every single possession on both sides of the ball. And there's not a lot of sports where you can impact the game as much as basketball.
Were you always a point guard or just mentally one?
Both. I physically, mentally, I was one of the shortest kids out there. So I always played the guard position, and I was one of the bossiest. So I always had to have the ball in my hands, and I always wanted to tell everybody else what to do. So the point guard position came very natural to me, probably because I was always playing with an older brother.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least you're better suited when you're a point guard to taking over the offense on the court than you would be in other positions.
Yes.
Gosh, and time flies quickly, and before you know it, you're being recruited.
Mm-hmm.
You were being recruited at many colleges. How did you get it down, and how did you decide on your college destination?
The recruiting process was a lot more wholesome back 25 years ago.
Spoken like a true ex-coach.
Yeah. We went out and we played, locally on the weekends, and we tried to, qualify for the national championships for AAUs, and everybody represented their state. And there was amount of pride that went into playing for, the Connecticut starters. And so, I remember I got recruited by a lot of different places across the country. I moved back to Connecticut. I actually lived in Japan when I was in middle school. So I moved back to Connecticut when I was in 10th grade. So I was probably a little under recruited until that summer, because nobody knew about me. Mm-hmm. But quite a few of the local schools kind of picked up. And then when we went to the national tournament, I got a lot more attention. So I narrowed things down to my final 4 schools were UConn, Providence, Rutgers, and Iowa. And amazingly enough, Vivian Stringer was the coach at Iowa. So that was one legend. Yes. Teresa Grench was the coach at Rutgers at the time. So there's another legend.
Right.
Bob Foley was over at Providence. He had a great run there, and they were beating UConn at the time for Big East championships back in the early 90s. And then Geno was, about 6 or 7 years into his stint at UConn. So I got recruited by quite a few legends of the game as I was coming out of high school. And I narrowed things down to both UConn and Providence. They were a little bit closer for me, and was fortunate enough to be desired by both schools, and really enjoyed both of my visits there. But I kind of could feel that there was something special brewing at UConn. They had just signed Rebecca the year before, and they had just gone to a Final Four 2 years prior, and Gamble Pavilion had just been built, and you just kind of had a sense that they were on the rise. And so having a chance to play in my home state close to my family, and play for a program that was, really getting ready to take off was actually ended up making the decision pretty easy for me. You later say as a Hall of Famer that you are a Hall of Famer because you played at the right school at the right time with the right teammates, and you were taught to be a champion by the best coach who's ever coached the game. And you've just said all of that. Geno signing Rebecca. Yep. And all of these forces coming together. Yes.
So you create some fond memories at UConn.
Yes, I did.
Yes. And, I happen to really enjoy one of the fondest memories, and that was I was the athletics director at University of Minnesota. When you first of all took Stanford 87-60 in the semis, and then beat Tennessee 70-64. And there you were at 5'6", starting point guard with Karen Walters, with Rebecca. What did it take for you to win the national championship that first time for UConn?
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of hard work. I mean, Geno built the program the right way. He recruited good players that were even better people. So we were really high into character. It was about just getting people in the program that were selfless and hardworking. did the right things, were role models off the floor, did well academically. And we just found a way to kind of mesh that all together into a really, really good team. We had gone to Italy the summer prior to the 95 championship. We implemented a new offense to focus around Kara and Rebecca, the triangle offense that the Bulls ran. And it just really worked for our team. We had really talented freshmen in Nikisha Sales. We had the blue collar players like myself and Jamel Elliott, and Carla Berube was there at the time. And the offense really worked for us because we were able to utilize Rebecca and Kara in the ways that they were most suited for, as scorers, as passers, as, people that we could cut off of. And, we just worked hard to make that offense work for us. We were driven to be selfless and hardworking defensively. And we get lucky. I think any coach that wins a national championship will tell you that a little bit of it is luck. We had a really great run. Everybody stayed healthy. It just really worked out for us. We had a chance to play Tennessee earlier in the year and get a feel for what they were all about on our home court. So it wasn't the first time seeing Tennessee. So it all culminated, into a really phenomenal experience for all of us. And I think what we're most fond of is the memory that we did it together, that we worked that hard together, that we were close as friends off the court, and that we were willing to sacrifice for each other every single day in practice. And, as much as, people think that maybe it seemed easy, it was a lot of hard work that went behind the scenes to help that championship happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to talk with some of the Huskies. And I remember a conversation in LA with Maya Moore when she won one of her two Honda Cups. And I said, I just want to know what happens in the gym that makes you always, you're undefeated in the whole season. Yeah. And you started that. You were the ground floor for that. But what makes you every day go into practice and get better? Because those of us who have even vague eyes can see that you get better during your 4 years. Yeah. And I remember having a great conversation with Maya. What would you say about that? What is it besides being selfless and playing defense and luck? But what is it going into the gym every day that puts yourself in the position to get better?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I would attribute most of it to Geno and the coaching staff and their ability to not only recognize the kind of student athletes that want to be driven to that level, but then every day to figure out how to motivate you to do it. I've been a coach for 20 plus years. I know how hard it is to change things up enough to keep your players motivated and interested in what you're doing. And I think there was just the right messaging and the right words and the right people in the gym every day. Obviously, sometimes success breeds success. Like once you start to have it, it gets addicting and you want to have more of it. But there was always a sense with Geno that we could go to another level. We never measured ourselves by the score of the game or what our record was. It was about trying to play as close to perfect basketball as we could every time we stepped on the floor. And so he challenged us in practice and made sure that our practices were harder than our games. Whether we had to play 6-on-5 or we had to have practice players that were bigger and stronger, or he would put us down 10 and tell us we had to come back. There was always some sort of a way to motivate and challenge us every single day. And then we held each other accountable. I think there's a sense that when you really care about your teammates, you don't want to let them down. When you care about your coaches, you don't want to let them down. So there were very few days where we got kicked out or we got asked to start over, because we really did want to perform for each other. And that's what being a team is all about.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, what's the best advice you were given in high school or college, in that whole era as a player?
Yeah, young in my career at UConn, I was starting as a freshman. I was a starting point guard as a freshman. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of responsibility. And I can remember Geno talking to me about leadership. And this is what I think makes him really special as a leader is, he talked to me a lot about how I needed to get to know my teammates better and that every one of them was going to have a different button that needed to be pushed in order to motivate them. And there's no way that I would know how to do that as their leader if I didn't know them off the court. So he, implored me to spend a lot of time with each of them individually, to get to know their personalities, get to know their backgrounds. So at the end of the day, when I needed to drive them and push them a little bit harder, as their point guard, they looked at me with respect because there was a relationship there. And that's what he does as the leader of that program. That's what he taught me to do as a leader of that program. And it's what I've continued to try to do as I've gone through my coaching career, is to make sure that the relationships I build with people around me are genuine and, specific to each person so that I can be the best for every one of them.
Makes sense. I spoke with Rebecca Lobo because in 1995 she was the Honda Cup winner, and she recalled it. I'm wondering if you remember where you were, what it felt like to be named the best female athlete in the nation and win the Honda Cup in 1996, and if those awards are still important to this day.
Yeah, they are definitely still important to this day, and the reason why is because they were so much more than just you being a good at basketball. I think every award that I won, academic player of the year, academic All-American, Wade Trophy, and certainly the Honda Cup. For me, it was about excellence in all areas of my life. And you take a lot of pride in that as a student athlete, or at least I did. And I think all these Honda Cup winners do. Like, you want to be a great teammate, you want to be a great student, you want to be a great role model. You want your career to mean something more than just the wins and the losses. And I think that that's what the Honda Cup represents. Is it's not just being the best basketball player; it's about being the best female athlete in college, and that's probably the highest honor that you can earn. And I don't remember exactly where I was, but I can remember coming to the award ceremony and feeling like, this is one of the best things that I've ever received in my life. And so I'll remember that, always. I love my cup. It's like prominent it was in my office. It'll be prominent in my house. And I just think it will mean a lot to anyone who wins it because of what you all stand for.
Mm-hmm. We asked some of the past Cup winners at the 40th. We said, should we redo this award, make it look more different, more contemporary? And to a person, they said, oh no, this is as special as it gets because it's got the heft, it's got the space, it's going to last for all time.
Yeah.
And
unique.
I was so reinforced to hear that because, you want to stay relevant, right?
Yeah, of course.
Want to make sure that the student athletes who are receiving it think it's special. And you have done just such a wonderful job of expressing that. Thank you so much. There are other basketball players in this elite sisterhood of Cup winners in the CWSA. So here's a drill, Jen. Okay. I'm going to ask you for adjectives that you would use to describe the following, and you can always say pass. Okay. But you can say a couple of adjectives if you'd like, just not paragraphs. Okay. Here we go. Yeah. Rebecca Lobo.
I know. I was going to say, when you ask me about Rebecca, it might be a paragraph, but I'll try to keep it short. I think Rebecca's just incredible. She's good at everything she's ever done in her life, and I'm proud to call her one of my best friends.
Okay. Shamiqua Holzclaw.
Unique and wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Jackie Stiles.
Relentless and hardworking.
Mm-hmm. Candace Parker.
Talented.
Yeah. Maya Moore.
Inspirational.
Mm-hmm. Brittany Griner.
With Brittany, I'm going to say dominant, but then also a sweetheart because I've gotten to know her as a person, and I think she has two sides to her.
Mm-hmm. Brianna Stewart.
Maybe the greatest of all time when all things are said and done, but certainly up there.
And before your time, but with a reputation, Nancy Lieberman.
Just a pioneer, just pave the way for the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. And at least if Ann Myers were listening, she would say, "What about me?" So let me throw in Annie Myers very quickly.
Very similar, just, the great before our time that the two of them maybe never got the attention that they would have gotten if they played in a different era.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Jen, you went on from with your biology degree.
Yes.
Right. You graduated. You played professionally in both the ABL and the WNBA for about 8 years. What was the best and the worst of the professional experience?
Well, I think the best, by far is the fact that you're playing against the best players in the world every single night. The competition, the attention that you needed to have to be at your best, because there was nothing easy. I mean, in college, we had quite a fair share of our blowouts. Mm-hmm. There was nothing like that in the pro league. So just the challenge of challenging yourself to be at your very best all the time. And then just the fact that you can pursue your dreams as a professional basketball player. Because with my biology degree, I don't know what I would have done, maybe gone to grad school or tried to go overseas. So just the opportunity to continue your career in basketball as a player and pursue your dream. Mm-hmm. The worst for me, and I'm sure it's maybe different for others, is that I had to be away from home. And I played my career in Connecticut. And then when I started in the ABL, I was with the Hartford franchise. So when I moved to the WNBA, I had to be 5 months a year away from home, living away from home. That ended up being hard for me, the lifestyle of living in a apartment that wasn't mine, and then living, in hotel rooms. It's not as glamorous as people think it is to travel as much as we do and have to give up a lot of our family time, especially in the summer, to pursue that dream.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't remember, did you go to Houston or Cleveland first?
I was in Houston for 2 years, 99 and 2000, and was part of their championships. Right. And then Cleveland for 3 years following.
Okay. And they didn't even have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame then, did they?
No, they did. It was there. Yeah.
Well, that gave you something to do there.
Yeah. I gave Dan Hughes something to do. He loved it.
Oh. Well, why don't you share some more of the differences between collegiate professional playing and then also coaching experiences for you?
Yeah. Well, I think for playing, the increased level of competitiveness, the size, the skill set, the attention to the scout, the mental part of the game is so much different. We had to know our opponent. We had to know what they were running. We went over that a lot more than we did in college, at least when I was in college. The travel was tough. We played more games. I can remember in the ABL, it's both ABL and WNBA. Sometimes you traveled the day that you played. You might play Friday night, travel the next day on a Saturday, and have to play again. And that in college, you never had to experience. So there was a probably easier schedule than the pro schedule. It was nice to be a pro. Obviously, making money playing basketball was great. Opportunities for endorsements, speaking engagements, to be able to earn money off of the hard work that you were putting in was definitely a benefit. And I have a very smart mother who made me start saving for retirement when I was 22 years old. So I was fortunate enough to start putting money away. And that has always allowed me to feel financially secure and stable as a young person heading into, family life and motherhood. And then, coaching, I've also had similar experiences. There's a grind to the college season and recruiting that can be hard. And then I go and I coach for USA Basketball where I'm coaching the best either in the country at the college level, or I'm coaching the best in the world, at least in the United States and at the national team level. And these players pick things up so much faster than they do in college. And so, there was an excitement to being able to really dig in and make adjustments and put things in on the fly that these professionals, they knew in their sleep, this is what they do for their livelihood. And they were on point with every day. And when you talk about like, why do you want to go to practice every day and try and be your best? You don't have to ask the pros to come prepared. They know this is their job. No matter how tired they are or how much they want to be doing something else, they show up and they do their job. And that is very unlike college kids who you have to try and coax every day to bring their best. The pros show up and they do their job, and it's really a pleasure to be a part of.
What were the qualities or attributes that contributed to making you a champion?
I would say that for me at 5, I like to say 5'6", but I'm really only 5'5". Okay. I had to have a bigger heart than everybody else. So I had to want it more. I had to decide that intangible qualities like intelligence and work ethic and determination would have to outweigh size or speed or shooting ability. So I think for me, I put the work in to be as good as I could be skill wise, and to study the game and understand it in a way that maybe others didn't. But I really had to just play harder than everybody. There wasn't a loose ball that I didn't think that I could win. There wasn't a screen that I didn't think that I could get through. There wasn't a drive that I didn't think that I could get all the way to the basket. So I just had to have a determination to just play harder and play smarter and play with a joy, that like there's nothing else I'd rather be doing in the world than this. And I think people appreciated that about me and the way that I played.
Jen, I think watching you for years, I can certainly echo that. People absolutely appreciated that. It seems to me that might be something that could be a wonderful benefit and a wonderful obstacle as being a coach. Am I off base?
Meaning like having those qualities myself and then, people ask me that, my whole career, like, how do you deal with coaching people that don't play like you? And I said, my answer was always, well, I played with people that weren't like me, like there were very few that matched my intensity and my competitiveness. At UConn, it was Jamel Elliott. Like she matched it, which is why we fought all the time in practice and in pickup because we wanted to win more than anyone else. So I think you kind of, as a coach, you find those guys that are just going to be motivated by your passion and your intensity, but you don't ever have the expectation that you're going to turn them into you. You want to make sure they love the game. You want to make sure they have a passion for the game and they're willing to work hard and play for each other. But you're never going to have 12 guys out there that you understand what it means to take all those intangibles and show up on the court every day and bring them to the table. So you'll always have guys that are just getting by on talent. You'll always have guys that get by just on work ethic. And then you have most guys that are a mix of both. But I think, there was definitely some challenges to finding players that match my intensity as a coach. But I love the impact that I could have on the careers of so many different women that I've coached over the past 20 plus years.
What was the best advice you were given as a coach?
As a coach, I don't know if I could narrow it down to one. I think basketball was always so natural to me playing it. And so I've always been a sponge, but when I got into coaching, I had no idea what I was doing. I remember early days, calling Geno at one point and him laughing at me as I'm talking to him about all my off the court issues. And he's like, yep. He's like, now that coaching is like 10% on the court basketball and 90% everything else, And so I think I just had to create some, people in my life and colleagues and mentors that I could just bounce things off of. And I've always been a question asker. All my USA basketball experiences, whether I'm not a coach or on a committee, I ask all the coaches around me a ton of questions about how they do things and how they deal with things, because I just think it's important to have an open mindset. And I think, I don't know if anyone specific gave me that advice, but that's something that I took with me for my whole career, was that you're never done you're never done learning. And the minute you think you are, you should probably stop coaching. And so I tried to have a growth mindset throughout my career. And I'm going to continue to have a growth mindset in my new endeavor because I need it. There's a lot that I need to learn. And there's a lot of people out there that have done jobs like this well. And as competitive as I am, I'm determined to be successful. And so I have no issue leaning on others and making sure that I'm asking for advice and asking for input on how to do things well at the WNBA level.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to stick with college just for a minute because you spent 21 seasons coaching college. You ended up with a 379 win, 276 setback overall record. And you were an absolute rock star at Hartford. You know, you were honored by University of Hartford in 2010 as the commencement speaker. You got an honorary doctorate degree. What made you leave that job after 15 years?
Yeah, it was actually 17 years.
Oh,
and
17.
Yeah, I, you know, there was one of the reasons that I stayed that long was because my AD was a rock star, Pat Miser. She was one of the first, she was the first woman to reward a full scholarship at Penn State in women's basketball. Yep. So she's like of the Title IX era. And then my president, Walt Harrison, was also a rock star. And so they made me feel like family. They made me feel like I could grow up in this profession as I started when I was 25. They made me feel like I could have a family and let that family grow up in that profession. So they treated me right. They incentivized me to stay based on how I was treated and how I was valued. And then I wanted to stay for my family. When Pat retired, you know, and then Walt was retiring a year later, I just made the decision that professionally it was probably time for me to move on, you know, to accept another challenge. I felt like I had brought Hartford to the pinnacle of where we were going to go by reaching two times, reaching the second round of the tournament. And I was kind of hungry to do something more. So at that time, my kids were a little older. Pat was gone. Walt was leaving. I just felt like the timing was right for us to make a move.
Now you had two boys. And were they athletes as well or otherwise interested?
No, they're athletes. They do different things. One's a golfer and runner and the other one's soccer and basketball. So, but they're very involved in sports and they love watching it and they love that their parents are involved in it.
Well, I wondered because I remember when you took the job at George Washington. And I knew how I know Pat, and it was hard for her to leave in the first place. But then to leave people like you who she'd hired, that makes a big difference.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, along the way, I've got to commend you for having served as president of your Coaches Association. I served back in the day, president of the American Volleyball Coaches Association in my other life before I went to the dark side of administration. But you were, I think in 1990. I don't know what year it was.
Yeah, no, I just finished my term as past president. So what is it, 21? So I served as the 2017 to 2019. I was the president, but I had been on the board about 12 years prior. So I'm just finishing up about a 15-year stint that they were able to capture me for. Yeah.
Well, I got to thank you for that on behalf of all the administrators, because, you know, many coaches just stay in a gym, and that's a great place for a coach to be. Make no mistake. The impact you can have in a gym is wonderful, but to take your perspective and give it to a higher place or a different place is much, much appreciated. What did you learn being in that leadership position nationwide?
Yeah, well, you know, it was very enlightening for me. You know, as you said, sometimes we just get so caught up in ourselves and our program and our players and our lives, and it's like nothing else matters. And when you decide you're going to be a part of something bigger than yourself, all of a sudden you start to think about all the people in college coaching. I started out just as a board member and then worked my way up to a legislative chair. And so I was involved in helping create, legislation that made sense for us and supporting the NCAA in that role. And then, eventually as the vice president, and past president. And, I think I was very proud of the impact that I made across the board. I think I was very approachable as a president. I think I was relatable and I made things relatable for people, and I engaged them in the process of what our association stood for. It was always like something that was like over there, and now I was encouraging people to come to our meetings and be a part of the process. And I think I made an impact in that way, and just was somebody that could represent the entire association as a mid-major coach that always was able to take off my institutional hat and represent the masses. And that's women, that's men, that's young people that are trying to stay in coaching or get into coaching. And then, of course, being a liaison to the NCAA and really starting to understand the inner workings of how things go, and I felt so enlightened and so educated in my time with the WBCA. And I certainly think it's going to help me in my future role that I served as the president. And I had it, right. There was budgets to review and to approve, and there was decisions to be made and quotes to put out and things to support, and messages to be sent and speaking engagements to do. And so, yes, it was time away from Hartford and GW, but it was time well spent. And I feel like I made a really significant impact in the lives of many people. And so I'm proud of my time with the association.
Yeah, thank you. What advice would you give to those aspiring to be a collegiate coach?
I actually have a lot of former players that have gotten into coaching or want to get into coaching, and I just tell them they've got to, grind it out and work and try and be a sponge. I think you have to learn every part. You have to be good at every part of it, not to get pigeonholed into being player development or just a recruiter or, maybe just the scout person, but to be in a position where you can experience all of coaching, the relationship building, the X's and O's, the putting a scout together, the recruiting life, and how hard it can be to be able to experience all of that. So you understand truly what the profession is about and also the impact that you can make on these young women. But, to make sure that they represent themselves well, make sure they represent their college coaches well. I always want my players to represent me well and what I stand for when they enter into these new jobs, and to be honest and to be truthful and to operate with integrity and to never work for somebody that wouldn't ask them to operate with integrity.
Mm-hmm. Hear, hear. Now, you worked with the U.S. Basketball program. I think you've been on maybe 7 or 8 previous USA basketball coaching staffs, and that was in addition to coaching collegiate. And you alluded it to grinding it out sometimes in the college world, and then you go to this USA basketball, and you're with many gifted athletes there. What did you learn about being a coach at that level?
Well, I mean, again, I'm with the best of the best, right? I'm with other tremendous college coaches. I'm with the best athletes at that age level, depending on what team I was coaching. And I'm with USA Basketball, which is one of the best organizations, that deals with athletics in my mind, in terms of, equity and how they treat women and how the championship mindset that they have, the gold medal mindset that they have. So again, it's attention to detail, it's unity, it's standing for the right things, it's performing the right way, it's preparation for being an Olympian, and so there's always lessons to be learned for me as a coach, for me as somebody involved in it, to understand how to scout international teams. There's a big learning curve there. And I was fortunate to be on enough staff so I've understood how to do that, to put me in a position where now I can be an assistant coach for the Olympic team and support Dawn Staley and her dream of, winning a gold medal as a coach after doing it 3 times as a player. So certainly, have learned a lot from the people that I've been around, and it keeps me on my toes because I know I have to be at my very best, because these athletes, they want to be coached, they want to be driven, and you're not allowed to have a bad day around them because they're showing up expecting to help, the United States win a gold medal. And so you need to be at the top of your game every time you're around them.
Mm-hmm. what are the changes you've seen over those years? And have they been positive ones?
In terms of?
The USA basketball program and international play?
I think so. I mean, I think that there's certainly been a high standard for a long time in the women's national team. They've won 6 consecutive gold medals. And so how they prepare and how they select coaches and players for their teams has been working. I think we've seen the rest of the world maybe catch up a little bit. I think the fact that these players from other countries can come and play in the WNBA. I think that the fact that our players are going overseas to play against these players from other countries are allowing these countries to actually catch up to the United States. It's not as easy to win as people may think it is. But I will say that as much as we've continued to get better, there's still a constant in the preparation, the team first attitude, and that gold medal standard that they have at every level in USA basketball.
Jen, before we look at your current challenge with the Mohegan Suns, tell us what we can expect from the Olympic women's basketball in Tokyo.
Well, we can expect, just another group of women poised to make history. There's no more successful team sport than women's basketball. So the 7th consecutive gold medal will surpass our own record of 6 consecutive gold medals. I think that we'll see, Japan is actually in our pool. So I think we'll see a very spirited game against Japan when we play them in Tokyo. I know things will be a little different because there won't be any foreign guests or fans allowed. So we'll have to make sure that we're, bringing our own energy. But, certainly the 12 women that they end up selecting will be the best representatives for our country. I can assure you of that. It'll be the best team that the committee feels like it needs to have for this Olympics to win another gold medal. And it'll be former Olympians that have already done it in the past. And in this case, there'll also be quite a few brand new Olympians for first timers. So that's going to be really exciting to see the future of USA basketball as we start to look at some of these older players retiring in the next few years.
Yeah. Well, Jen, let me share a little expectation I have, see if it's far-fetched. I'd like you as who I think is a great leader to get next to our 1991 Cup winner, which would be Dawn Staley.
Yeah.
Two of you take a selfie and shoot it to me so we can cheer you on in the Olympics. Would you do that?
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, excellent. 2 Cup winners in Tokyo, hopefully bringing home the 7th consecutive gold medal. Excellent.
Great.
So you accept this job as the president of the Mohegan Suns. What kind of differences do you think you can make? You know a little bit about winning. You were part of 2 WNBA championships with the Houston Comets. Now you're responsible for business operations, marketing, strategies, etc.
Yep.
What's it going to be like, or are you just finding out now?
I'm definitely finding out a lot now, but had a pretty good indication of what the job would entail when I took it, and certainly a big pivot. I remember the Connecticut Sun moved from Orlando right at the end of my career. So I think there was only one summer that I got a chance to come and play in Connecticut. And I was like, I wish this team had moved sooner, because I would have loved to spend some time in my career here, just in terms of location to my family. But also I remember the arena being special. And the fan base, obviously, in Connecticut being so loyal and passionate. So I knew enough about the team from when I played against them, but also going down to see some games in the last decade, being able to experience some games and knowing the success. I know the success that Kurt Miller has had over the last few years with the team, and that they're poised to be a championship contender. So the business side of it is what's new. The basketball that'll be easy, like learning what my role will be to support Kurt and continue to help him build this program. That'll be, I think second nature to me as a former point guard and boss. And in my time between, college coaching, WBCA, I've learned how to manage budgets. I've learned administrative duties. And so I think for me, it's about building a team around me that's successful, that will complement my strengths, but also fill in for the weaknesses that I have. And some of that weakness right now is just not knowing. But it's also, again, I referred to this earlier, just having a growth mindset about knowing that I don't know it all and trying to intake as much information as I can. So what does it look like to have a successful, organizational structure underneath me? What does it mean to have, corporate partnerships and partnerships in our community that make sense for our team? And, what does it look like to develop a successful ticket sales plan so we can sell out our games after the Olympics? So again, a lot to be learned, but I'm excited and about the opportunity. I think it's a pivot in my career that was needed at a time where I was maybe, a little bit tired of some of the coaching challenges and looking for different opportunities. And it's a chance for me to go home and be with my family and let my kids finish their high school careers in Connecticut.
Yeah, that seems like a great recipe. And I can't imagine that anyone has, out of all of our past Cup winners, a better mix of skill sets to be a sports executive than you. And we're going to be cheering you on. We've watched your path all these years, and we're going to be cheering you on. I remember going out to the Mohegan Suns when I was with Women's Sports Foundation, and I wanted to see Lindsay Whalen's first game as a professional.
Yeah.
And she had been drafted by the Mohegan Suns, had been last at Minnesota, of course, and what a fun environment that was even then. And of course, the WNBA league, the leadership has grown yet further. So
absolutely,
we're going to look forward to seeing you and cheering you on throughout all of that time.
Thank you.
Here comes the big question that people really want to know from the past Cup winners, and that is, what are the life lessons that sport taught you?
Well, I think that, to be successful, you also need to have like a good level of humility and appreciation. No success that you ever have in sports is earned by yourself. So no matter how many hours that I put in to my career, whether it be as a player or a coach, and now as a president of the Connecticut Sun, I think I'm very grateful for the people around me that have helped me achieve this level of success. I think for you always have to surround yourself with special people that are going to challenge you, support you, and have your back and have loyalty. And so I've learned a lot about what it means to be a good teammate through sport, what it means to have positive and lasting impact as a leader. And I think most importantly, what does success look like? As a person in sports, and how do you measure it? And for me, I measure it in the weddings that I get invited to for former players, and the notes that I continue to get, or the phone calls that I get in appreciation for the impact that I had on people's lives. Even when I was let go at George Washington, the outpouring of support that I received from my colleagues in coaching, gave me a clear indication of how much I've given, and never asked for anything in return. And when I needed it, everybody was there for me. Mm-hmm. So I think that you treat people right, you do things the right way, you surround yourself with great people, and you just have a high level of appreciation, and then you measure success the right way. And that leads to like a pretty good life in sports.
That's a pretty good life. That's like a wrap, Jennifer Rizzotti. Oh gosh. Well, is there anything else that was just something to leave in everyone's mind, in our audience who's been listening throughout these last 33 podcasts. And as we go into our event, June 28th, which is really more of a broadcast than an event. Yep. But Jen, I'm hoping that we can get you back to the 50th. So plan ahead.
Sounds good.
This year, we have 5 years to get this together.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, no, I think that it's, one of the reasons that I took this job with the Connecticut Sun is because I feel like it's important to invest in women and invest in sports. And so I know that I can continue to use my platform to do that, even in this new role of mine, and amplify the voices of my players. And I just want to say thank you to you all for always doing that, for always giving us a platform and allowing us and amplifying our voices and celebrating the success of women in sports. So thank you.
You're very welcome. You are so welcome. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. It was just great to catch up, and you can follow her on Twitter.
Yes. Just at Jen Rizzotti. Pretty simple.
There you go. At Jen Rizzotti. Excellent. 1 N or 2?
1 N. Jen. Yep.
We've got it. And let me repeat some social media information. Social media plugs for CWSA and at WIS Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Show notes can be found at wisports.com. While you're on the website, check out the other conversations from the world of women's sports and visit us at collegiatewomensportsawards.com for more information about the awards and to see our roster of honorees. Mark your calendar. June 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Defying the Odds, the CBS special on our inspiration finalists. And June 28th, 9 p.m. Eastern Time is our annual CWSA Honda Sports Awards, where we are featuring the class of 2020 that went incomplete, the class of 2021, and yes, we are celebrating the Jen Rizzottis of the world in our 45th anniversary. Thank you for listening and helping us turn up the volume for women's sports. Onward.